Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Emmett Emery Sr. You better stand your watch. Today's topic is going to be a two-part series topic. I want to go a little bit into mental health this month, for the month of June 2025. And what I'm going to talk about with mental health, the part I'm going to talk about, zoom in on, is going to be PTSD. Post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is PTSD, is a mental health condition that is caused by an extremely stressful or terrifying event, either being part of it or witnessing it. Symptoms may include flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, and uncontrollable thoughts about the event. Now, there are various definitions to try to connect to PTSD. And during this podcast, I'm going to give you a couple definitions, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about when was PTSD initially diagnosed or recognized to the form it is today. And then part two, we're going to talk about the symptoms of PTSD in certain individuals. PTSD is a psychotic condition that may occur in people who have experienced or witnessed a traumatic event or series of traumatic events. The individual often experiences the event, and these events are emotionally or physically harmful or life-threatening. PTSD is a psychotic condition that may occur in people who have experienced or witnessed a traumatic event or a series of traumatic events. The individual often experiences the events as emotionally or physically harmful for life-threatening. Now, those are the three definitions that you'll find if you search for the definitions of PTSD. Now, by the late 1800s to the early 1900s, the taking cure, as coined by Sigmund Freud, became a new method to treat PTSD symptoms. These early therapeutic techniques paved the way for therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and others that are used to treat PTSD today. By the 19th century, mentions of PTSD associated with combat and war were merely characterized as battle exhaustion or soldier's fatigue. This disorder was thought to relate to exhaustion so much that PTSD was often referred to as the 1,000-yard stare, which was a reference to the blank look and dislocation demeanor of traumatized soldiers. Imagine being treated for that. The lack of diagnosis for that. You in this pretty much comatose state, and you're looking, just staring off. Some people stare off now, they daydream off. But at that time, that wasn't a daydream off. The mind just wondering, or probably even not thinking about anything, just staring off. 1915, the term shell shock was introduced to the medical field. This condition produced the same symptoms as PTSD and went on to become the predecessor of the official diagnosis. Shell shock treatments included unorthodox and dangerous methods, from psychoanalysis to drastic and unproven treatments of electric shock. You got PTSD, which is more of a stress, anxiety disorder, and they're giving you electric shock, shooting electric current through your body. Wow. Just thinking about that bring tears. I mean, I would have been doing double lifetime sentences in prison because somebody would have been knocked out. By the 1950s, treatment for shell shock became more humane. They finally got the message. But many would not admit to any symptoms of trauma due to developing stigma surrounding PTSD and mental illness in general. It was not until the 1970s that PTSD gained the national spotlight to countless Vietnam veterans began experiencing a range of psychological problems. In addition to Vietnam veterans, social movements at the time also began to study Holocaust survivors and survivors of domestic abuse. Throughout history, there There has been no smooth arc from the ignorance to enlightenment and understanding the interplay of mind and body at work in trauma. In the American Civil War, medics diagnosed traumatized men with an ailment they termed soldier's heart, blaming their post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, diagnosed in 1980, blaming their psychological collapse on cardiac problems. And American Psychiatrists Association created the post-traumatic stress syndrome diagnosed in 1980. So it wasn't really diagnosed by the American Psychiatrists Association until 1980. And I went through those years from 1915 to the 19th century to the 18th centuries until 1980 when they finally diagnosed it. So imagine the individuals that went through the shock treatment and went through the misdiagnosis between PTSD and schizophrenia. But thank God they finally buckled down and diagnosed it in 1980. This sparked a proliferation of research. Now, it was something new, but yet old. So people now was beginning to, okay, it's been brought out by American Psychiatrists Association. So now we're going to do some research. Now, since it's out, we can research it because no one really knows what PTSD is. That's what it came up with in the 1980s. So PTSD is not just in the United States. I don't want anyone to get the misinterpretation that PTSD is just centralized among members in the United States. No, it's worldwide. PTSD in Europe is a topic of interest with epidemiological studies in Europe countries focusing on data from recent cross-national research initiative. The European Society of Traumatic Stress Studies, ESTSS, was found in the early 1990s after the American Psychiatrists Association found it, labeled it as PTSD in 1980. They addressed the consequences of trauma within the mental health community. The World Health Association, the World Health Organization, WHO, also provides information on PTSD, including symptoms, treatments, and self-care. Additionally, there are specialized treatment centers for trauma in Europe offering trauma-specific therapies and individualized care. PTSD in Asia is a growing topic related to trauma and racial psychology. Improved emergency and trauma care systems may save up to 2 million lives in Asian countries. Few studies have tested the validity of ICD-11, CPTSD, in non-Western settings, particularly in Asia. The World Health Organization, WHO, I don't know why I keep saying association, has a fact sheet on post-traumatic stress disorder, including key facts, symptoms, treatments, self-care, and WHO response. PTSD in Latin America is a significant concern, with Latin persons being exposed to higher rates of trauma events and comorbid medical health syndromes. Some studies have found that Latinos tends to endorse more severe post-traumatic symptoms compared to white men and Latino men. Latinas, these are women. The impact of bereavements due to COVID-19 in Latin America has also been studied, assessing the risks of PTSD. Creating a supportive environment for PTSD awareness in Latino community is crucial. PTSD is an understudy constructed in India. Existing Indian studies on PTSD focus on the general populations of disaster-stricken communities. Cultural nuances, stigma, and the use of Western-derived diagnostic instruments likely contribute to the unidentification and undertreatment of PTSD in India. A study found a much higher prevalence of PTSD in India compared to previous surveys. PTSD is common in the Middle East due to the myriad conflicts experienced by people in the region. PTSD is present in sub-Saharan Africa. The pooled prevalence of PTSD among displaced people in Africa is high. People living in SSA, sub-Saharan Africa are disproportionately exposed to trauma and may be at increased risk for PTSD. Initially, displaced people in SSA struggle with the trauma of violence, loss, and displacement, making them significantly more vulnerable. Loss and displacement, making them significantly more vulnerable to PTSD. Errors are being made to expand knowledge of the genetic architect of PTSD in Africa. Now I have some data for you as we go further into PTSD. PTSD have now, and I'm noticing a lot of the media, social media, and a lot of the organization have declared the month of June 2025 as mental illness. And you got a lot of cities around the world is focusing on PTSD right now. But they're not really digging into the cause of PTSD. They more than less recognizing that PTSD is a mental illness, but not a mental illness to the point where it's hospitalization, which is good because PTSD you can have PTSD, but it can come and go. For example, if an athlete have concussions, and that concussion, the headaches for 3 months is prevalent, and then for 6 months they go away, just like a person having migraine headaches, and then they come back for 3 months. Well, PTSD is the same, but it's triggered by a trauma reaction. I mean, something could have happened in your past that was so traumatic that it caused you to keep this memory. Or something could have, for example, in the Navy, you can get PTSD by disconnection, disassociation. What I mean by that? I mean, some sailors have what they call seashore rotation. And your rotation could be 5 years out at sea, 2 years at shore. Well, some sailors get home anxiety. They get missing home, missing kids, missing spouse. And that messes with them while they're out at sea. And some of them end up allowing this to be a mental condition, which prevent them from performing their jobs. And it's tough when you're in the middle of the ocean and only thing you see around you is water. It means sometimes you're so far in the ocean, you only see birds. You don't see birds. Every now and then you might see a whale, or you might see a shark. I mean, sometimes you go so far out, you don't even see dolphins. Always going to see some type of fish. But then you can have PTSD from that. Or you could be a government worker. Pretty much do the same thing as a military personnel, but you go overseas and you're dealing with areas for 6 months without coming home, or 2 years without coming back to the United States, or you can be from another country and come to the United States and do the same thing 2-3 years without going home. And you have this separation anxiety. And it causes you to have PTSD. PTSD is a serious thing. I remember when I first got diagnosed with PTSD and I was being treated by this individual. I wouldn't say it was a doctor because it wasn't a doctor, but it was like an assistant to a doctor. And he misspoke. I'm not going to say diagnose because he wasn't in position to diagnose. He said, well, I think you can help your PTSD if you take 15 minutes in the morning and just meditate. I said, meditate? Don't you know PTSD is connected to anxiety and depression? And if I'm meditating or thinking about what's going on, because I'm not going to be meditating in a free state, I'm going to be thinking about the things that cause me to have PTSD. So meditation would be a no-no. And I just looked at this individual and said, the VA really need to screen the people that they have servicing the veterans, because the veterans is not getting the treatment that they should be getting. So a lot of veterans don't go to VA facilities. They rather go to a doctor outside of VA facilities, which hinders a lot of the benefits that they have. So they're stuck in between. So a lot of the PTSD victims don't get treated for PTSD. That's military. And the military veterans do have the VA facility to go to. But what about the individuals who don't have that sort of connection and have PTSD and don't realize they have PTSD? I mean, if you sleep in 1 to 2 hours, maybe 3 hours a night, something is wrong. If you have depression and anxiety, something is wrong. Either you have PTSD, you go get treated for that, or you have sleep apnea, which is still not serious. It's still a serious thing to have. Because if you don't get treated for sleep apnea, you can stop breathing in your sleep, because both of them two have pretty much the same symptoms. PTSD is prevalent. It's prevalent in men, women, kids. I mean, they are doing research now that's saying that animals can have PTSD. Yeah, I could believe that, because you have some animals that's in the pound have separation anxiety. They might be in the pound because they ran away. You know, you got some of them dogs and that you open the door and phew, they're gone. And by the time you look around, that dog is gone so far down the road, you can't go down and catch him. Somebody might pick him up, or the dog catcher come past, pick him up, and they take him. And you'll never see that dog again. And that dog have separation anxiety because it was in a home. Or a cat that like to go out. And then a cat come back one day and you moved. Well, that cat can be, oh, wait a minute. I've been doing this for months, for years, and now you're just going to up and move on me? They know they're not in the wrong location because the cat know where they live. They get separation anxiety. The lifetime prevalence of PTSD is 5 to 6% in men and 10 to 12% in women. Women have almost double the role of PTSD as men. Women's PTSD also tends to last longer, 4 years versus 1 year on average to men. I think, and don't quote me on that, I think a lot of the women who has the so-called postpartum syndrome after childbirth, it's PTSD. I'm thinking some of them being diagnosed incorrectly. Because some women goes into a state of depression and anxiety, and they can't sleep. Sometimes when they diagnose, they say, oh, you can't sleep because your child is up at night. No, you can't sleep because your body won't let you sleep. I can't sleep. Sometimes I sleep 2 hours a night. My wife said that you don't sleep in the daytime, but I'm looking up, you don't sleep at night, but you sleep in the daytime. Yeah, sometimes when, it's not all the time, but sometimes it goes like 1 or 2 weeks in spurts. I sleep 2 and 3 hours at night, and I'll be up. I'll lay down, go to sleep, and I'm up. I'll lay down, go to sleep at 10, I'm up at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I can't go back to sleep. So in the middle of the day, around 3, 4, 5, I'm sleeping. I can't keep my eyes open. It's like being like an old man who's 80 years old, and all of a sudden he sit down and boom, he's sleeping. I don't want to perceive that. But sometimes when I'm idle, I sleep because I don't sleep at night. And my body looking for that rest. So looking for the rest in the daytime. And when you have sleep apnea, you sleep in the daytime. Your body allows you to sleep in the daytime, and you up at night. When you have PTSD, you up at night. Yes, I have both. I have sleep apnea and I have PTSD. And I was told it's if you have one, it's a possibility that you have the other. I was diagnosed with PTSD first, and then I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. And because they pretty much have the same symptoms. Sleep apnea have anxiety, depression, and inability to sleep throughout the night. And PTSD have anxiety, depression, and inability to sleep at night. They have more symptoms connected to each one of them, but those three is connected to both of them. Between 13 and 25% of athletes experience post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD. and other human-related disorders, a rate that exceeds that of general population. I've mentioned athletes. You got a whole lot of sports. You can get, a gymnast can get a concussion just by doing a flip. You're dealing with your brain when you're flipping or you're changing the direction of your head. You're dealing with your brain. A football player who says a running back, you're hitting the neck. Well, you're dealing with your head, your spine, and that causes trauma to your body. Basketball player who goes up for a layup and get hooked around the neck and then hit their head as you go down. A track athlete who's running, who's sprinting, a distance runner who's sprinting, gets stuck in the crowd and get elbowed and then fall and hit their head. Baseball player, I was looking at the highlights on Sports Center this morning, and this pitcher got hit in the head from a line drive from the batter. It went straight down. You're talking about messing with their head, the injury, or a military person in war and the plane or helicopter go down and it crash and you hit your head. And a lot of time that helmet doesn't help. It doesn't help. The injury might happen. It helps to sustain your life. But you're still getting head injuries from that. Or you're walking through a mine and then it goes off, boom. And all that explosive mess with your ears, and your ears connected to your head. So, or a baby falling off the bed and hitting their head. They're messing with their head. It causes issues with their head. So, do that child have PTSD? I don't know. But I know you still messing around with that cranium. So that could be issues in itself. Percentage of kids who get PTSD. Studies show that about 15% to 43% of girls and 14% to 43% of boys go through at least one trauma. They go through, I said kids. I didn't say teenagers. I say kids. I couldn't find the number for teenagers and young adults. But for kids, they go through some form of trauma. Whether it be bullying, whether it be the parents being divorced, whether it be separation from grandparents, whether it be a death or separation from a sibling, a death or separation from the parents, they go through trauma. 15% to 43% of girls and 14% to 43% of boys. So the numbers are the same. Only difference is 15% to 43% girls and 14% to 43% boys. Girls is a percentage higher. So no matter what you do when you calculate male, female, boys and girls, that female or that girl is still going to be higher because they go through more trauma. Remember, the lifetime prevalence of PTSD is 5 to 6% in men and 10 to 12% in women. Of those children and teens of those children and teens who have had a trauma, 3% to 15% of girls and 1% to 6% of boys develop PTSD. See the numbers for the girls? This is boys, girls, and teens now. Of those children and teens who had a trauma, 3% to 15% of girls, it's a high number, 3 to 15, and 1% to 2%, 1% to 6% of boys develop PTSD. So don't think that young girl, that teenager is just dramatic, or don't just turn them away when they act depressed or they act stressed, or you see a little bit of anxiety, or you see they're not sleeping at night, or you see that they're sleeping too much in the daytime. Take a look at that. I mean, that young lady might have PTSD that has not been diagnosed. They say, well, she up in the middle of the night texting, or she up in the middle of the night playing on video games, probably because she can't sleep. She up in the middle of the night watching movies, probably because she can't sleep. Or she's sleeping a lot in the daytime because she's not sleeping at night. So you need to look at that. Take that baby in. They young kids and teenagers to me are still babies. Hell, my kids still babies to me. I got my oldest child 40 and my youngest child 28. They're all babies. Well, it should be 28 this year. They're all babies to me because they'll never catch my age. Percentage of the race who gets PTSD. 8.7% African Americans get PTSD. 7% Hispanics get PTSD. 7.4% whites, Caucasians, get PTSD. 4.0% Asians get PTSD because their upbringing is different. They brought up more with the meditation and the Buddha and those things that caused them the mind to be at ease and at stable. And then their diet is different too. For that reason, a lot of them don't get PTSD. And I wanted to dig deeper into that, but I didn't get a chance to. But if you look at those numbers, the African Americans is 8.7%, and Caucasian are 7.4%. But Hispanics not too far behind at 7.0%. Now those numbers is not worldwide, so I'm not taking the numbers from Jamaica, Haiti, Africa, or Latin America, or European numbers. No, these numbers are specifically from the United States. And 8.7% African Americans is going to have PTSD. It's not always going to be military. It can be from violence. It can be, that trauma can come from accidents. That trauma can come from anywhere. It can be war. It can be military, African American. The Caucasian, 7.4%. It could be athletics. It could be violence. That can come from anywhere. And that's the scary part. And Hispanics right there, 7.0. So you're looking at three race, that's 7.0 to almost 9.0% getting PTSD. And that's just in the United States. So PTSD is pretty high here in our state, the other countries with PTSD. But it's not being treated the way it should be treated. So that's why I'm having this podcast, so you can have an understanding of how serious PTSD is. Percentage of military veterans who get PTSD. Approximately 7% of U.S. veterans will experience PTSD at some point in their lives. This is slightly higher than the 6% lifetime prevalence in the general adult population. PTSD is more common among female veterans at 13% compared to male veterans at 6%. Now remember, everybody think that the PTSD is really prevalent among veterans. Veterans are the one that have PTSD. We're not looking at the people in general society as having PTSD. It's a military sickness. It's a military mental illness. That's what I hear. But hear these numbers again. 8.7% African Americans. That's not including military. 7.4% Caucasians. That's not including military. 7.0% Hispanic. Does not include military. 4.0% Asian. Now, mind you, you have African American, you have Caucasian, you have Latinos, Hispanics in the military. That's a separate number. And the military number is 7% for veterans. That 7% include both male and female. So the numbers are higher among the American people than this military. And they're not being treated for it. Out of that 7%, 13% of the veterans is women. Only 6% is male. But when the male get it, they get it. I got it. And it's not no joke either. Over 23% of active military service members are diagnosed with PTSD. However, the rate varies significantly between studies, ranging from as low as 1.4% to as high as 41.3%. Now I say they are diagnosed with PTSD, but they still not recognized as having PTSD through the military. You got veterans that are doing claims and said they have PTSD, they get diagnosed with PTSD and still do not get disability percentage. You say that they have PTSD, but then you come back and say, oh no, it's not in your medical records, or it doesn't show that you had it on active service. It's not in your, so therefore, we're not going to put your percentage down as having PTSD, even though you was diagnosed with it. Now you got the diagnosis of 23% for active military. They still in the service. They still in the military. They haven't gotten out. And then you got the veterans at 7%. How is that? How is a veteran at 7% diagnosed with PTSD and you're 23% active military? So you're telling me you got PTSD in the military, but when you come out as a veteran, you don't have it anymore? I'm gonna leave that alone. That was the first part, dealing with PTSD. I got a part 2 that we're gonna do on the next podcast. I'm not gonna go too deep in it because I want to keep your interest. All I want for you to do is spread the word on the importance of PTSD throughout the world. It's not just in the United States, not just in Asia, not just in Latin America, not just in Europe. It's all over. It's all over. But it's not being treated all over. So we need to focus a little bit more on post-traumatic stress disorder. I want to thank you for tuning in. I know it's been a while. I was on vacation for the whole month of May. Took a cruise through Alaska, went through Vancouver, Canada. Had a good time with my wife. We spent a little time together. Had an anniversary at that time too. So now I'm back. We finna start partying again through this podcast. Just had a party today. Party. And while we partying, at the completion of our party, I need you to subscribe to me. Thank you and goodbye.